Hey guys, it's Angelica. I'm one of your guys' TAs this semester, and I'm just going to be doing a quick overview of the pre-screening process for your guys' next exam. So I'm going to share my screen here, and then we'll get right to it. So yeah, this is the pre-participation process, which is particularly the informed consent and the ACSM algorithm, and then we'll also go over the risk stratification and HHQ goals. So these are examples of informed consent and PRAQ. These are sheets that you guys have probably seen before, but this is what they look like when individuals are filling these out. And then we want to look out for signs and symptoms from their pre-screening forms. So there's 9 of them we generally want to look out for. So those consist of pain or discomfort, shortness of breath at rest, dizziness or syncope, orthopnea, ankle edema, palpitations or tachycardia, intermittent claudation, known heart murmur, or unusual fatigue or shortness of breath with usual activities. So these are two infographics for active exercisers versus non. So I think these are pretty helpful if you guys have seen these before. It kind of deals with if the individual has heart disease, metabolic disease, or renal disease, and then if if the individual has signs or symptoms and what intensity is possible. And then this is the FCLAP BBB risk stratification criteria. In my opinion, after going through this course, this is the most important criteria to know. So this table lays out everything pretty well, and it's definitely topics you need to memorize and know how to apply to different case studies and people. So yeah, we'll go over this. This consists of family history, cigarette smoking, age, physical inactivity, body mass index, blood pressure, lipids, blood glucose, and HDL. And they all have their own defining criteria here. And then hold on, we'll go review your guys' first exam here just to make sure we're all familiar with what the risk stratification is. So then this is Kai. Based off her description here, is she considered a regular exerciser? No. And then how do we determine this? It says up here that she is working 3 days a week at 35 minutes, but she's only walking around campus at 2.8. So particularly, it has not been 3 months, but also her walking intensity is lower than 3 METs. So that's why she wouldn't be considered an active exerciser. And then does Kai have known cardiovascular, renal, or metabolic disease? So we can go up to her description here and see, and it doesn't look like she listed anything. So we'd probably say no here, and then specifically because no disease is mentioned. And then does Kai have any signs or symptoms suggestive of these diseases? So we'll go back up to her description here. Yeah, it looks like at the bottom here, she has noticed that her resting heart rate has been really fast on numerous occasions during the last month. And she also gets a funny feeling, funny heart palpitations on a regular basis. So we'd go ahead and say yes here, and then we'd list out those signs and symptoms that she has listed. And then her desired intensity would be vigorous, since she is already playing Ultimate Frisbee once a week for 60 minutes at 80 METs. And then she's also been referred to us by a therapist to begin moderate to vigorous intensity. And then based on the ACSM pre-preparation screening, should Kaya get medical clearance? So we go ahead and say yes. From those infographics before that showed us that she's not a regular exerciser and she does have signs and symptoms. So she would definitely need that medical clearance before we would be able to give her exercise prescription. And then, yeah, how do we determine this? Her signs and symptoms of disease, particularly. And then per her FCLAP BBB stratification, this is what it would look like for her. So family history, yes, it's a risk factor. Family history is not mentioned in her description, so we'd count that as a risk factor. And then cigarette smoking, yes, that's also a risk factor. She's an avid cigarette smoker. And then for her lipids, no, that's not a risk factor for her. Her lipids are under 130, but her HDL are over 60 for a negative risk factor. And then for her age, nope, it's not a risk factor for her. She's under 55 years old. She's 19. And then for physical inactivity, yes, it's a risk factor. She's physically inactive according to the ACSM guidelines of 75 minutes to 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity. Um, for her BMI, no, that's not a risk factor for her. Her waist circumference is under 35 inches, which is the risk stratification um, in women. So she's at 32 inches, so she's below that. And then blood pressure, no, her blood pressure is below 130 over 80. Particularly hers is 112 over 62. So she'd be below that. And then blood glucose, no, her blood glucose is under 7.5, sorry, 5.7 at 4.4%. And then so that totals three risk factors for her and one negative risk factor. So like total at the end, she'd have two total risk factors for Kai. And yeah, that's the process. If you guys have any questions on pre-screening or FCLAP BBB criteria, I'd love to answer them. I'm always able to reach on email, so just let me know. Thanks, guys. Good luck.